Good afternoon on what is a bright, warm and sunny day. It is Saturday the 14th of May and I'm in the reading Nook with a parcel and a nice cup of tea. So let's get this parcel open. Okay, it's a bit tough to get that extra open, but there we go. So pulling out the first thing, we have Orbital Blues, a space western RPG from SoulMuppet Publishing, which is a independent British publisher, and Orbital Blues is the rock and roll future that never was and nobody wanted. It is an intergalactic age of bounty hunters, vagrants, and bleeding heart outlaws. The galaxy is a lawless expanse, and you are an interstellar outlaw. Together with your ship and your crew, you must eke out a living in the frontier and chase down the intergalactic dream of freedom and success. A love letter to the offbeat sci-fi, vintage music, and cooperative storytelling, Orbital Blues is all you need to play out tabletop adventures in the style of space westerns such as Cowboy Bebop, Firefly, or Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this is a genre which has been visited before, most notably with Firefly and also Serenity. So essentially the Firefly television series has had not one, but two role-playing games devoted to it, both using variations of Cortex, both standard Cortex and then Cortex Prime. And then, of course, there's the Scum and Villainy role-playing game from Evil Hat Productions. So you do have a choice when it comes to this kind of genre. But Orbital Blues, we've got inside, we have quite a clean, open layout. I mean, just let's put it so just like that. It's really nice. So we have a galactic generator for names. So this is location names, essentially. And we have a sort of like all suitable for a lo-fi space roleplay. And then we get into and this just keeps giving this kind of like what the explanation of what this game is. So here we have lo-fi sci-fi roleplay. Turn over the page, and then we have Orbital Blues role-playing for sad space cowboys. So there's almost constant sense of this is what it is. This is what it also is. This is this is what it is again. And here we have kind of like it's sort of like we have a diner here in the style. It's an American diner. So we have the sense of sort of like the lost dream of the frontier, as it were. Will we get into more details of the game? So we do have a list of what's in the game, what it's warning about, which includes anxiety, death, depression, gambling, mental illness and associated traumas, poverty, smoking, substance abuse and violence. Right, so kind of what you get in a lot of other role-playing games, to be honest. Nevertheless, it does say, when it comes to describing your world and bringing it to life, it's important to remember that the world of Orbital Blues is anachronistic. It is conspicuously belongs to an earlier period than you might expect. Despite being a universe with interplanetary travel, data networks and personal spacecrafts, the frontier galaxy of Orbital Blues partially starts itself on mid to late 20th century aesthetics. From the faded 50s and 60s golden age of capitalism looks to the landscapes of the early 90s and the closing decade of greed, when the glossy paintwork of late-stage capitalism began to chip away. So then we get into character generation. So that's all kind of setting the tone and feel, and we're supported by things like tables. Tables are great for generating aspects of your game. We've got a D100 names there, followed by your stats and sort of like the meat, the meat and bones of your character, or certainly the bones anyway. Before we get into character types, and this has kind of like a retro punk kind of a sensibility to it, I suppose, that is eking back to that sort of like 50s and 60s golden age of graphic design and advertising. And I mean, obviously, you know, so for example, in the choice of the fonts, I really like this. This captures that feel, and they've gone some length to do it. And the other thing that's reminiscent of is the thought and effort that's gone into putting into the graphic design of things like Nook or Mothership. You know, so tables of weapons, mementos, and equipment. You know, just you know, interesting. And the thing is, it's just adding more detail and flavour to your character. And the cruise ship, again, that gets detailed because obviously that's going to play such a big role in the stories that Orbital Blues is going to tell. And then gambits, essentially. These are basically your advantages, disadvantages, sort of like your character traits, sort of thing. I mean that's on first glance. Let me remind you. And then we have your troubles, because obviously, you know, you're going to have troubles following around. That's going to get you into trouble, literally. And then how to play the game. I'm just generally impressed by how a lovely looking game this is. You know, and then we have, you know, things like a blues check and a trouble brewing check for events and so on. So blues check for your depression, I presume, you know, and then that you acquire, in the process you acquire blues. Get too depressed, and then that triggers trouble. So then we get to money, and that's dealing with debts and credits and balancing the books and just getting by. And then sort of like the interesting thing is we have a just simple thing here, an advert. It's for a computer. And no one would produce a computer that looks like that today. But in the retro future of Orbital Blues, that's so fitting, and it's also kind of evokes the adverts. It evokes the adverts of the past, in particular, sort of like the kind of Apple style adverts. Then we get to combat, covering things like bringing knives to a gunfight, cinematic gunfight, that is. And what else we've got lists of weapons, and then another advert. I really absolutely adore these adverts, and that's the advert. Okay, this is an advert for an evac suit. Great, and it's actually reminiscent of a 60s spacesuit, as you know, that the Mercury or Gemini crew would have worn. Vehicles and stuff we covered in here, and then ship's equipment, and then also space combat, because, you know, space is dangerous. And then more on equipment. So it's dealing with things like more equipment. So whether that's actually, these are quite detailed here. So it deals. You do have sections here on things like androids, authority monitor, biocompass, bioverifier. You know, just a bit more on interesting devices, bugging drones, cargo scanners, galactic news monitor, EMP grenades. No illustrations, which is slightly disappointing, but you know, a lot of this is kind of familiar from. You know, depictions on television, so we kind of go, yeah, it looks like that, or in comics, so it looks like that, you know. So you know, if you play, you've kind of got an agreement upon what it looks like. But basically on certain assumptions. Then we have how to run the game. And then Frontier Galaxy, to dealing with things, discussions of Space Cowboys, the Frontier Galaxy, wood panel, CRT, and lasers. Life on Mars, how does space travel work? And the thing is, you can just sort of see how much of, you know, of these pages are devoted to graphic design rather than just getting the text in there. The text is in there and it's placed and it's important, but the text is given, it's another thing of just being given space, because this could have been a much thinner, this probably could have been half the size and it would have been a fairly text-heavy book. Not the case with this sense of graphic design, which feels open and clean. And I mean, this kind of gets about as text dense as it does so far in this book. Then we've got a typical list of jobs and so on, which the game master can sort of develop into full work. So these are sort of so essentially legal work, repossess, capture, transport. Then we have illegal work, steal, kill, smuggle. So really, there's sort of like very simple kind of jobs that you're going to want to take, and then discussion of what comes after, the aftermath of the job. Troubling times, how to bring trouble, the character's trouble into play, and have that affect the characters. And then we have enemies, and trouble with villains. It's a kid's collection of unsavoury characters, antagonistic archetypes, and troublesome hooligans. Interstellar outlaws may come across in the Frontier Galaxy. Just hack and modify these profiles to your liking and make your own. The galaxy is a big place. So these are very simply presented. You know, these could have been just sort of like a list, but again, I really like the graphic design and layout in here. A lot of thought has gone into these, and they're very simply presented and accessible for the game master. Then we have marks, essentially targets of opportunity for the player characters to inveigle or take advantage of. Enemy vehicles, atmosphere vehicles, again all ready there for the game master to bring in. We've got a sample setting, and then back out into orbit. Again, really nice, clean looking layout and tidy, and it's kind of getting sort of like almost a sense of there is a contrast between just this choice of font and putting it alongside a spaceship. It's really kind of, oh okay, before coming up a bit more up to date with that kind of graphic layout and the choice of font there. And then we have another setting, more of an industrial setting, and then sort of a settlement itself, off-world settlement there, about with a spaceship about to land. That gives a nice sense of a feel for this, and just an aerial picture used as, you know, just as there's a sense of sort of like, you know, there's a spaceship, you're coming into land, this is a spaceship, this is what you can see. That's a nice touch. And then the strip, okay, you know, archetypal kind of area for the player characters to interact with, and we've got locations along that strip. You know, it's Sunshine View Apartments, Viper's Bar and Grill, Canyon Avenues, just giving it sort of like the Americana flavour that just is so well handled in this book. And then typical NPCs that they might run into whilst they are out there, and classifieds. You know, I mean, interesting. Sort of like, you know, you don't necessarily see. You think of classifieds these days very often, but they do occur, and it's interesting to see those in the science fiction content and more. So yeah. and then we've got the final word at the back there. So that is Orbital Blues, with which I am thoroughly impressed just by going through that and looking at it. It's a lovely looking book. The graphic design is fantastic. It gets across it's the contrast of its themes together, which is a space travel in an anachronistic retro future, which is looking back further than you kind of normally do, for, as I say, an interesting clash of kind of aesthetics. So yeah, that's Orbital Blues from SoulMuppet Publishing. Glad I got hold of a copy of that. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this unboxing of the Nook. If you have, then please do click on that like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments and feedback, I appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you'll see me out here with a parcel and a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do hit that subscribe button. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. We'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.